Hi, everybody. I had some questions about updating elements in the database with respect to the French demo application. So I've updated that code a little bit, just a tiny bit, and I'm writing this video to talk about it. So first off, I updated the view and template of the person page to display not only names, but also ages and timestamps. Now, without changing the code at all, it is the case that if I choose a person and change their age, so Bob is no longer -11, Bob is now 20. This will update Bob's entry. There aren't two Bobs. The Bob who was -11 is now 20, and the timestamp has also been updated. Now, that's how the application worked before. In Friendship, however, previously it was possible to create duplicate friendships. I could have had 30 copies of Bob as Janet's friend. That's no longer the case. Now, if I try to update Bob as friends with himself, there won't be two of them. The existing entry will have its timestamp updated. Maybe Janet is friends with Bob. But if I wait a minute until the 37 turns to 38, and I hit submit again, I won't get a second copy. Instead, that entry is updated. Let me show you the code that I added to make that happen. Previously, my code always did these four things. You give me a first name and a second name from the form, and I will create a new friendship object. I will assign the first thing from the form to the first field of the friendship object, and the same thing with the second field of the friendship object. And then I will save that object to the database. That's what I used to do. Now I've changed the code a little bit. I begin by trying to retrieve an object from the database. Let's go to the database and see if there's already an object where first equals the value I got from the form and second equals the value I got from the form for second. See if those names are already in the database. If they are, the variable link will be set to that existing database object. If they're not already there, an exception will occur. That is why I've put this line of code inside of a try block. If an exception occurs, control will jump to the except block. If no exception occurs, control continues with the next line of code, line 43. So if it's not already in the database, great. I'll create one. As a debug step, I am printing out the word except. And you can see in the lower right-hand corner, I did create one new friendship, and so except got printed out once. Doesn't already exist, so I'll make one. Here's a brand new one. It gets its own ID field. And I'll set its first value and its second value. And either way, whether I retrieved an existing object from the database or created a new one, when I'm done doing that, I save that object. This alone would have been enough to cause the application to behave the way I want, not duplicate friendships, just update the existing friendship. But this doesn't require that all web pages, all forms that interact with the database preserve this uniqueness property of friendships, that there's only one friendship with a given first and second person. To make that happen, I had to update the friendship model. Inside of the class friendship, I created an inner class named meta. This is a standard way that Django uses to define the behavior of classes that are inherited from standard Django classes. So anything that's derived from models.model can have some of its behavior defined by creating a meta class inside of it. And so there's lots of different properties you could assign in this meta class, which are picked up on with the standard Django library code. The one we're using is uniqueness. I'm specifying that in the constraints for this class, one of them is that it must be unique between the first and second fields of the class friendship. Furthermore, this constraint itself must be given a name. So I call it friends. I never use that name, but it is necessary that I give it a name. Now, if someone else writes code that updates this database table, that code will not be able to force a non-unique entry into the database. The database maintains this integrity, this uniqueness, and it will generate an error if some other application tries to save a name pair that already exists in a new object, not updating an existing object, but creating a new one with the same name pair. So you wouldn't have to do this if you were perfect in all the code you wrote, all the forms that interact with your database. But it's good software engineering to anticipate that if you want to maintain this constraint, let the database maintain it. And then when future forms are written, you're guaranteed that if they erroneously allow duplicate first and second name pairs, the database will flag that as an error. The developer will catch the error right away. All right, so the code that I am showing this video is now the code that's live in Canvas. And hopefully this answers the 3 or 4 questions I got about how do I maintain, update in some cases, and create a new thing in another. Answer is the right code tries to retrieve from the database, and if we're unable to retrieve from the database, only then do we create a new, well, in your application, this will be a grade item. Does this grade item already exist? No? Well, then I'll create a new one. If it does already exist, great. I will simply update it with this grade. That helps.